My number one favorite buy and hold asset of all time is the SCHD ETF. And as you can see here, I practice what I preach. I've been buying shares of SCHD consistently now on a daily basis for quite a while. Now, one of the main reasons I've been buying so much SCHD and why I'm so bullish on this ETF is because of things like the price return over time, the starting dividend yield, and the massive dividend growth rates. Now, in this video, I'm going to show you a crazy prediction for SCHD's ETF price and dividend by 2023 and beyond. But also, I'm going to show you the actual numbers and math behind the power of compounding when it comes to an investor buying into a dividend growth beast like that of SCHD. Now, if you own SCHD or have ever thought about it, make sure to stick around because some of these numbers are going to blow your mind. I just finished my brand new dividend investing ebook where I share exactly how I went from zero to now over 7 figures invested, and also on how I earned more than $6,000 per month in dividends. I also finished my custom dividend tracker that you can use to track your dividend income progress on an ongoing basis. So make sure to grab yourself a copy of my dividend investing ebook and the new dividend tracker today. It's the first link in my description. Now, just to get everyone caught up on the same page, SCHD is the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF, and the summary objective is pretty simple. The fund's goal is to track as closely as possible before fees and expenses the total return of the Dow Jones US Dividend 100 Index. Now, SCHD is not only popular because the Dow Jones US Dividend 100 Index has a pretty strict methodology, meaning that it's pretty hard for different stocks to even become a part of the index. But also, SCHD has a cheap expense ratio, meaning that for a long-term buy and hold, you're not going to spend too much money by owning it. Not to mention that over time, at least, SCHD's ETF price has grown substantially, up around 188% since around 12 or so years ago. But one of the most popular aspects about this ETF, and one of the main reasons on why I'm personally, as of right now, as a 31-year-old long-term dividend growth investor, is buying 2 shares of SCHD consistently on a daily basis. Yes, every single day the market is open, I'm buying not 1 but 2 shares of SCHD across my multiple portfolios, and this right here is just a live transaction list from one of my portfolios. But one of the main reasons I'm doing this is because as a long-term dividend growth investor, I think SCHD has pretty much everything I'm looking for. Now, keep in mind there's other dividend growth ETFs out there that are also just as good, if not better, but for this video's sake, I'm going to go through the math and the prediction for SCHD. Now, this ETF has a 3.55% trailing 12-month dividend yield, so it's not the highest yield across the board compared to all stocks or ETFs, but considering what this ETF has to offer, the price appreciation historically, and the dividend growth rate, the trailing 12-month dividend yield is pretty impressive. Before we look further into SCHD's dividend growth rate, and before we see how much SCHD's dividend is going to grow over the next several years, let's talk a little bit about what dividend growth rate is and how it works. So dividend growth rate is a measure that indicates the annual rate at which a company's dividend payments have increased over a specific period of time. It represents the compounded annual growth rate, or CAGR, C-A-G-R, of dividends over that period. And the dividend growth rate is often expressed as a percentage. Now, if you were to calculate the dividend growth rate, you would typically take the difference between the final dividend payment and the initial dividend payment, divide it by the initial dividend payment, and then divide that result by the number of years in the period. Now, speaking of dividend growth on the 3-year timeline, 9.4%, 5-year timeline, 13%, and 10-year, 11%. Now, I can honestly tell you with experience, considering I've been investing in the stock market for around 7 years now, dividend investing that is, it feels so good seeing a stock or ETF announce that there is a dividend increase. Now, if you just have a share or two of a stock or ETF and they announce a dividend increase, it's of course not really going to make or break or change your portfolio all that much. But over time, as you stack up more shares of a stock or ETF that announces a dividend increase, it's going to substantially impact the amount of annual dividend income you receive. And the best part of all with this, you did nothing to get the increase. You just held onto the asset and that's it. Now, in the case of SCHD, for example, just to prove how much dividend growth and how much more this ETF has paid over time, in December of 2023, a 74-cent dividend was paid, and 10 years ago, 10 years prior, a 28-cent dividend was paid. So just 10 years later, SCHD is paying just under 3 times as much on a quarterly basis to investors, which I'm going to show you here in a second what that math looks like, but it's substantial. Because after all, dividend growth is one of the main, most important metrics that SCHD has to offer. If you look at the last 10 or so years that SCHD has been trading, you can see that every single year the dividend growth rate has been up around 15%, 9%, 7%, even years upwards of 20% dividend growth. Now, if SCHD is currently paying around $2.66 on a trailing 12-month basis, if we were to take $2.66 and times it by 9%, that means 23 cents more of dividend income could be expected year after year if SCHD does continue to raise their dividend around 9% in dividend growth year over year. That means around 12 months from now, we could easily see this annual payout trailing 12-month amount go from $2.66 up to $2.89. And the year after that, if we were to extrapolate out and add another 9%, which again could be lower or higher, we could see $3.15 paid out by SCHD sometime by the year 2025. Now, realistically speaking, how much in dividends is SCHD going to be paying out by time we are at the year, let's say 2030 or even 2035? I think that at this rate, if we keep going at the same rate that we're going, SCHD could not only be paying more than double the amount of dividends on a 10-year basis, but of course it's possible to even be paying more than that. Now, to look into some specific numbers for me personally as an investor that currently has around $35,000 worth of SCHD throughout my multiple portfolios, and as of right now, I'm buying around 2 shares of SCHD on a daily basis. So for every trading day of the year, I'm buying around $150 worth of SCHD, which comes out to just shy of $38,000 per year into more SCHD. Now, keep in mind, I know not everyone has $35K worth of SCHD right now, and not everyone has that much cash balance to work with. And of course, some investors might even have more. But for me personally, these are the numbers that I'm working with. And as of right now, and long term, if I stayed invested in SCHD year over year and reinvested the dividends consistently, we could be looking by the time I'm 61 years old at a $10.8 million dividend portfolio just of SCHD if I continue to buy at the rate that I'm buying at, and around $1.7 million in dividends per year. Now, of course, I have to state the obvious. We don't know if SCHD is going to continue to raise their dividend at the same rate they have historically. Dividends could be cut, things could be changed around. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. But just going off of some of these sort of frothy numbers, the future of investing into something like SCHD could be extremely substantial if the dividend growth rate continues to move at the rate that it's moving at, because with more dividends paid out on a quarterly basis, I'm going to be able to buy more shares of SCHD quicker. And the more shares I buy, the more dividends I'll be able to receive, which of course basically creates the compounding snowball effect. Now, regardless or not, if you want to buy into SCHD, specifically, it doesn't really matter too much to me, but I do think that for long-term dividend growth investors, buying into a high-quality dividend growth ETF that has consistently raised their dividends year over year is going to be vital in order to build a massive compounding portfolio later on down the line. But when it comes to SCHD specifically, now I want to hear from you guys down below. I want some predictions. As of the last dividend that you can see here, SCHD paid 74.23 cents, and the first dividend ever paid by SCHD was 12.17 cents back in December of 2011. Now, I want some predictions down below in the comments what you think the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF's dividends going to be on an annual basis come 2033 and 2035. And then 5 years from now, we'll come back to the comments on this video and we'll see who's the closest and wins. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to please drop a like down below and subscribe for more future content like this. Thanks as always for stopping by, and if you are interested in investing, make sure to check out these recent videos I posted right here.